The Great Hall of Nexus Prime buzzed with angry voices. Representatives from 43 different species argued about trade routes and mining rights. The Ethereal Collective's ambassador floated in his crystal sphere, his thoughts echoing in everyone's minds. The Cathera delegate's biosuit pulsed with irritated colors. Even the mechanical Nexus units clicked and whirred with what passed for frustration among their kind. Ambassador Zektar of the Vorthan Empire slammed his forearms on the table. The Outer Rim territories belong to those who can defend them, he growled. His scaled face showed deep anger. Your species had 300 years to claim those worlds. You failed. The Ethereal's response rippled through every mind in the room like cold water. Violence is not the answer, Zektar. The Council exists to prevent such thinking. Easy words from a species that feeds on starlight, shot back Commander Yix of the Hive Collective. Her insect-like features clicked with annoyance. Some of us need actual resources to survive. The argument had been going on for 6 hours. It was the same fight they had every few months. The galaxy was big, but good worlds were rare. Everyone wanted more space, more resources, more power. The Council tried to keep peace, but peace was hard when dozens of species all wanted the same things. That's when the silence came. It started small. The background hum of communication arrays flickered. The quantum entanglement transmitters that connected every world in the galaxy stuttered once, then twice. Ambassador Veltar of the Aquatic Union was in the middle of speaking when his words simply stopped reaching anyone. The great screens around the hall went dark. The constant flow of data from across the galaxy just stopped. Every representative looked around in confusion. This had never happened before. The Galactic Communication Network had worked perfectly for over 1,000 years. Technical problem, muttered Engineer Crix, the Nexus representative. Its mechanical voice carried uncertainty. Systems show no damage. All equipment functions normally. Signal simply terminates at unknown point. The Ethereal Ambassador's mental voice crackled with static. Cannot reach the collective mind. The connection spans light years. It should be impossible to sever. Fear began to creep into the room. The communication network was more than convenient technology. It was the lifeline that held galactic civilization together. Without it, every world was alone. Every ship was isolated. Every colony was cut off from help. Emergency protocols activated across Nexus Prime. Military commanders tried to contact their fleets. Government officials attempted to reach their home worlds. Scientists ran diagnostics on every system they could find. Nothing worked. The galaxy had gone completely silent. Then the sensors detected something. It appeared at the very edge of their detection range, beyond the galactic rim where nothing should exist. At first, the sensor operators thought it was an error. The readings made no sense. The object was massive beyond anything in their databases. It moved through space in ways that violated basic physics. Bring it up on screen, ordered Council Leader Morpheus, an ancient being whose species had been among the first to achieve spaceflight. His weathered features showed concern that had not been there in centuries. The main display flickered to life. What they saw made everyone in the room go quiet. It was a ship, but calling it a ship seemed inadequate. The thing was enormous, easily 50 kilometers long and 20 wide. Its hull was black as the void between stars, but it seemed to absorb light rather than simply reflect none. Strange angles and surfaces covered its exterior. Weapon ports dotted its flanks like the spots on some great predator. Unknown design, reported the Nexus engineer, its voice flat but somehow worried. No match in any database. Hull composition shows materials that should not exist. Energy signatures violate known physics. The ship moved with purpose. It was not drifting or exploring. It knew exactly where it was going. Can we communicate with it? Asked Ambassador Zektar. Communication arrays remain non-functional, Crix replied. However, incoming transmission detected. That's impossible, said Commander Yix. If our communications are down, how can anything send us messages? Unknown, admitted the Nexus unit. The transmission came through on every screen, every speaker, every communication device on Nexus Prime. It bypassed their security systems as if they did not exist. The voice was clear and calm, speaking in perfect galactic standard. "This is Terra 1, we're coming home." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Terra. The name existed in their oldest records, buried deep in classified archives that most people had forgotten existed. It was a myth, a cautionary tale from the early days of galactic expansion. Council leader Morpheus felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. He had been alive during those times. Though he had been young then, he remembered the stories that the Council had tried to bury. "Access the restricted archives," he ordered quietly. "Search for Terra. Search for humans." The records that came up painted a picture that most of the galaxy had forgotten. 300 years ago, during the early expansion period, the galaxy had encountered a species unlike any other. They called themselves humans, and they came from a world called Terra or Earth. At first, contact had gone well. Humans were adaptable and intelligent. They learned quickly and fit into galactic society without much trouble. But then things changed. Humans were too adaptable. They learned faster than anyone expected. Their technology advanced at frightening speeds. They spread to new worlds and thrived in conditions that would kill other species. They were not just another race joining the galactic community. They were something that could grow beyond anyone's control. The Council of that time had made a decision. They declared humans too dangerous to coexist with other species. A coalition of the strongest races had attacked human space without warning. The war had been brutal, but short. Human worlds were destroyed. Their ships were hunted down. Their colonies were scattered to the void. The official record stated that humanity had been completely destroyed. It was listed as a successful peacekeeping operation that had saved the galaxy from a dangerous threat. But now, looking at the massive ship on their screens, it seemed the records had been wrong. "Impossible," whispered Ambassador Zektar. "They were wiped out. Every ship destroyed, every world burned." "Apparently not," said Council Leader Morpheus grimly. The ship continued its approach toward the galaxy's inner systems. Long-range sensors tracked its movement. It was not rushing. It was not zigzagging to avoid detection. It simply moved forward, with the confidence of something that feared nothing. More data came in as the sensors got better readings. The ship's power output was beyond anything they had ever seen. Its hull showed signs of advanced technology that their scientists could not understand. Most disturbing of all, deep scans suggested this might not be the only ship out there. "What do we do?" asked Commander Yix. Council Leader Morpheus stared at the screen for a long moment. 300 years ago, the galaxy's leaders had made a choice to destroy humanity rather than risk what they might become. Now it seemed that choice was coming back to haunt them. "Send word to every fleet commander in the galaxy," he said finally. "Tell them to prepare for the worst and start evacuating the outer colonies." "What about communications?" asked the ethereal ambassador. "Pray they come back online," Morpheus replied. "Because if they don't, we're going to face this nightmare, blind and alone." The massive ship continued its journey toward the heart of galactic civilization. Behind it, the void seemed somehow darker, as if other things were moving in the shadows between the stars. Terra 1 was coming home, and the galaxy was about to learn what 300 years of exile had taught humanity about survival. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of Terra 1 and watched the galaxy spread out before her. Stars that her people had not seen for 3 centuries glittered in the darkness. Each point of light represented worlds that had once traded with human colonies. Many of those same worlds had sent ships to burn human cities. She was tall and lean, with gray hair pulled back in a simple knot. Her uniform was black like the ship's hull, with no decorations except for a small patch showing Earth's blue marble. At 65, she had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. "Distance to the galactic rim?" she asked. 2 days at current speed, replied Commander Lisa Webb from the navigation station. Lisa was younger, maybe 30, with the kind of hard eyes that came from growing up in space. She was good at her job and had no patience for sentiment. "They know we're coming," observed Dr. Marcus Webb, Lisa's father and the ship's chief scientist. He was studying readings from their sensors. "Every military frequency is buzzing with activity. They're scared." "Good," said Admiral Chen simply. Behind them, the bridge stretched out in a design no other species would recognize. Human engineering had evolved during the long exile. Everything was built for efficiency and redundance. If half the ship was destroyed, the other half could still function. That kind of thinking came from centuries of having nowhere to run. Terra 1 itself was a marvel of desperate engineering. It had been built from the ruins of 12 different worlds, using technology that humanity had developed in the darkness, between galaxies. The ship was not just a warship. It was a city, a factory, a research station, and a symbol all in one. 50,000 humans lived within its corridors. They were the last remnant of a species that had once numbered in the billions. Every person aboard had been born in exile. Every person aboard had grown up hearing stories of the worlds their ancestors had lost. "Contact from the Council?" asked Admiral Chen. "Nothing yet," reported Communications Officer Torres. "Their networks are still down." The communication blackout had been their first gift to the galaxy. Human technology had advanced far beyond what their enemies remembered. Quantum disruption. Fields could shut down any communication system that relied on traditional physics. The galaxy was used to being connected. Now they would learn what isolation felt like. "Admiral," called Dr. Webb from his station, "I'm reading a fleet moving to intercept us. 12 ships, mixed species configuration." Admiral Chen nodded. She had expected this. The galaxy would not simply let them pass. They would test Terra 1's strength first, probably with a small force that they could afford to lose. "Time to intercept?" 6 hours at their current speed, Lisa replied. She looked up from her console. "Orders?" "Continue on course. When they get close enough, demonstrate why that's a mistake." The fleet that moved to intercept Terra 1 represented some of the galaxy's finest ships. The flagship was a Vorthan battlecruiser, its heavy armor and powerful weapons having served the Empire for 2 centuries. Escort ships from the Hive Collective darted around it like angry insects. Nexus dreadnoughts brought their mechanical precision to the formation. Captain Vextor commanded the intercept fleet from his bridge aboard the Vorthan ship Dominator. He was a veteran of dozens of conflicts and had never lost a battle. His orders were simple. Determine the unknown ship's capabilities and intentions. "All ships maintain formation," he commanded. "Target their engines first. We want to disable, not destroy." "Sir," reported his sensor operator, "the target ship is not changing course or speed. They're ignoring us completely." "Weapons range." "In 30 minutes," added the tactical officer. Captain Vextor studied the enemy ship on his screen. It was certainly large, but size did not always mean strength. His fleet had firepower enough to level a small moon. One ship, no matter how big, should not be a serious threat. "All ships prepare to fire on my command," he ordered. On Terra 1, Admiral Chen watched the approaching fleet with calm interest. Dr. Webb's daughter Lisa had moved to the weapons station, her fingers dancing over controls that would have confused any alien engineer. "Charging the main batteries," Lisa reported. "Fighters are ready for launch." "No fighters," Admiral Chen said quietly. "This won't take long enough to justify launching them." Dr. Webb looked uncomfortable. "Sarah, we could disable their ships instead of destroying them. Send a message without killing thousands of people." Admiral Chen turned to look at him. Her expression was not cruel, but it was absolutely certain. "Marcus, they came here to kill us. They believe we're the same species they drove into exile 3 centuries ago. They think we're weak. It's time they learned otherwise." The engagement began when Captain Vextor's fleet reached weapons range. 12 ships opened fire simultaneously, their combined firepower enough to crack a planet's crust. Energy beams and missile streams converged on Terra 1's position. None of them hit. Terra 1 simply was not there anymore. The massive ship had somehow moved sideways through space, appearing several thousand kilometers from where it had been. The alien fleet's weapons struck empty vacuum. "What just happened?" demanded Captain Vextor. "Unknown, sir," his sensor operator replied, voice shaking. "The target ship appears to have shifted position without moving." "That's impossible." "Yes, sir. It's still impossible." Terra 1's response was swift and precise. The ship did not fire missiles or energy beams. Instead, something far stranger happened. Space around the alien fleet began to twist and fold. Reality itself seemed to bend inward. The 12 ships found themselves caught in a gravitational anomaly that had not existed seconds before. Their engines screamed as they fought against forces that pulled them in different directions. Hull plates began to buckle. Internal systems failed as the laws of physics seemed to stop working normally. "Captain." Vextor watched his displays with growing horror. "All ships emergency jump, get us out of here." But their jump drives would not function. The space around them was too distorted. They were trapped in a bubble of twisted physics that human science had created. One by one, the ships began to break apart. Not from weapons fire, but from the impossible stresses of existing in space that no longer followed normal rules. The Vorthan battlecruiser's armor meant nothing when gravity itself was being used as a weapon. The engagement lasted exactly 7 minutes. When it was over, 12 of the galaxy's finest warships had been reduced to scattered debris. Terra 1 continued on its course as if nothing had happened. The destruction was recorded by long-range sensors throughout the galaxy. Military commanders watched the data with growing dread. They had sent a full fleet against the human ship. That fleet no longer existed. The enemy had not even been scratched. On Terra 1, Dr. Webb stared at the tactical display showing the debris field they had left behind. "Thousands of people just died," he said quietly. "Thousands of people who came here to kill us," Admiral Chen replied. "They made their choice. We could have disabled their ships, shown mercy." Admiral Chen turned to face him fully. "Marcus, mercy is what got us exiled in the first place. Our ancestors tried to fit in, tried to be peaceful, tried to coexist. The galaxy repaid that mercy by burning our worlds and scattering our children to the void." She gestured toward the debris field. "This is not cruelty. This is education. The galaxy needs to learn that we are no longer the species they remember." Dr. Webb looked like he wanted to argue further, but his daughter Lisa spoke first. "Father, they had 12 ships, we have one. If we'd shown weakness, they would have called for reinforcements and tried again. This way, maybe the next fleet will think twice." Admiral Chen nodded approvingly. "Lisa understands. We are not here to make friends. We are here to take back what was stolen from us." The bridge fell quiet except for the steady hum of the ship's systems. Terra 1 continued deeper into galactic space, leaving behind wreckage and questions that would keep alien military planners awake for weeks. In his laboratory, Dr. Webb returned to his research. He was studying the quantum harvesting technology that powered their ship. It was the key to everything they had accomplished. By learning to draw energy directly from the fabric of space itself, humanity had transcended the limitations that bound other species. But the technology came with a price. It required a kind of thinking that was cold and precise. Human emotions like mercy and compassion could interfere with the calculations needed to bend reality. Perhaps that was why his daughter's generation seemed so much harder than his own. Admiral Chen stood alone on the bridge as her ship carried them toward the heart of galactic civilization. Behind them, the void between galaxies stretched endlessly. Somewhere in that darkness, other human ships were moving. Each carried survivors from different worlds. Each had evolved in its own way during the long exile. Soon the galaxy would meet them all. Terra 1 did not race toward the galaxy's center like an angry beast. Instead, it moved with the patience of a predator that knew its prey had nowhere to run. Admiral Chen had planned this campaign for decades. Every move was calculated to send a specific message. The first target was a Vorthan mining colony on the edge of their territory. New Scales was home to 2 million reptilian workers who extracted rare metals from asteroid fields. It had been built on the ruins of a human research station that the Vorthons had destroyed 3 centuries ago. The colony's defense platforms detected Terra 1, while it was still a day away. Warning signals went out immediately, but the communication blackout meant no help could be summoned. The colony was alone. Administrator Kresheval watched the approaching ship through his office window. He was old enough to remember the stories his grandfather had told about the human wars. Those stories had seemed like ancient history until now. Evacuate the civilian areas, he ordered his staff. Get the children to the shelters. Sir, replied his aide, our weapons can't even scratch something that size. Should we surrender? Kresheval considered this. The humans had sent no demands, no ultimatum. They simply approached with the steady certainty of a natural disaster. No, he said finally. We fight. Whatever they've become out there in the dark, we don't give up without trying. The battle for New Scales lasted 3 hours. The colony's defense platforms fired everything they had at Terra 1. Missile swarms, energy cannons, and particle beams all struck the human ship's hull. The attacks did no visible damage. Terra 1's response was surgical. Instead of destroying the entire colony, it targeted specific structures. The main government building vanished in a flash of twisted space. The military command center simply folded in on itself and disappeared. One by one, every symbol of Vorthon authority was erased, but the civilian areas were left untouched. Homes, schools, and hospitals remained intact. The message was clear. This was not random destruction. This was targeted revenge. When the attack ended, Administrator Kresheval found himself standing in rubble that had once been his office. Around him, the colony's infrastructure lay in ruins, but his people lived. The humans could have killed everyone in minutes, but they had chosen precision over slaughter. A communication pod landed near the destroyed command center. Inside was a simple message. New Scales now belongs to Terra. Any attempt to retake it will result in complete destruction. You have been warned. News of the attack spread through the galaxy despite the communication blackout. Ships carried word from system to system. The pattern became clear as more colonies were hit. Terra 1 was working its way through a list, targeting every world that had participated in humanity's exile. On the bridge of Terra 1, Dr. Marcus Webb watched the tactical displays with growing unease. Each attack was flawlessly executed. Each target was chosen for maximum psychological impact. His daughter Lisa coordinated the strikes with the efficiency of a computer. Next target is the ethereal research station at Minebridge, Lisa reported. 3 days at current speed. What's our intelligence on their defenses? Asked Admiral Chen. Psychic barriers mostly. They rely on mental attacks rather than physical weapons. Lisa's voice carried a note of contempt. Their mind tricks won't work on our crew. Dr. Webb knew she was right. The quantum field generators that powered Terra 1 created a kind of mental static that interfered with psychic abilities. It was an unexpected side effect that had become a tactical advantage. Sarah, Dr. Webb said quietly, approaching the Admiral's command chair. We need to talk. Admiral Chen studied him for a moment, then nodded. Lisa, you have the bridge. Maintain course and speed. They walked to Admiral Chen's private office, a small room lined with star charts and historical documents. Earth's flag hung on one wall, blue and green colors faded but still recognizable. You're having doubts, Admiral Chen said before Dr. Webb could speak. I'm having thoughts, he replied. About what we're becoming, about what this campaign is turning us into. Admiral Chen poured 2 cups of coffee, a luxury that Terra 1's gardens could barely provide. We're becoming what we need to be to survive. Are we? Dr. Webb sat down across from her. Look at Lisa's generation. Look at how they talk about the aliens. There's no empathy left, no consideration for the cost of what we're doing. The aliens showed no empathy when they burned our worlds. That was 3 centuries ago, Sarah. Most of the people we're fighting now weren't even born then. Admiral Chen sipped her coffee slowly. Outside the window, stars wheeled past as Terra 1 continued its journey. Marcus, do you know what I remember most about Earth? Tell me. The libraries, We had buildings full of books, full of knowledge, that belonged to everyone. Children could walk in and learn about anything they wanted. Art, science, history, poetry. It was all free for anyone curious enough to ask. She set down her cup. The Vorthons have libraries too, but theirs are restricted. Only the right bloodlines can access certain knowledge. The ethereals hoard their psychic techniques. The Nexus units share data only within their collective. I don't understand your point. My point is that we were different. We shared our knowledge freely. We helped other species solve problems even when there was no benefit to us. We tried to lift everyone up together. Admiral Chen stood and walked to the window. And for that generosity, they declared us too dangerous to exist. Not because we were violent, but because we were successful. Dr. Webb joined her at the window. So we become what they said we were? No. We become what we need to be to ensure it never happens again. Their conversation was interrupted by an alert from the bridge. Admiral Chen activated the intercom. Report. Admiral, came Lisa's voice. We're detecting ships moving to intercept us. A lot of ships. They returned to the bridge to find the tactical display showing red dots scattered across their path. The galaxy's major powers had finally coordinated a response. 300 ships from a dozen species were converging on Terra 1's position. Impressive, Admiral Chen observed. They managed to organize this without their communication networks. Orders? Asked Lisa. Admiral Chen studied the display. 300 ships represented a significant portion of the galaxy's total military strength. If Terra 1 could defeat this force, there would be very little left to oppose them. Continue. On course, she ordered. When they get close enough, show them what happens when you bring a sword to a reality fight. The largest fleet in galactic history moved to engage a single human ship. Admiral Thekaran of the Collective Fleet commanded from his flagship, a massive ethereal vessel that bristled with both physical weapons and psychic amplifiers. All ships, maintain formation, he broadcast on short-range channels. We surround the target and attack from all sides simultaneously. It cannot phase shift away from 300 ships at once. The plan was sound in theory. Terra 1 had demonstrated the ability to move through space in impossible ways, but even human technology should have limits. No single ship could face the combined might of galactic civilization. The engagement began at maximum weapons range. 300 ships opened fire as one, creating a sphere of destruction centered on Terra 1's position. Energy beams crisscrossed through space. Missile clouds darkened the stars. For several minutes, the human ship disappeared entirely within the storm of fire. When the weapons stopped, Terra 1 emerged from the chaos completely undamaged. Worse, it was no longer alone. Smaller ships had appeared around it. Sleek fighters that moved through space like living things. They accelerated and turned in ways that should have killed their pilots instantly. There were only 50 of them, but they moved with coordination that made them seem like parts of a single organism. Where did those fighters come from? Demanded Admiral Thekaran. Unknown, sir, replied his sensor operator. They weren't there before the attack began. The human fighters struck the galactic fleet like a plague. They passed through shield barriers as if the barriers did not exist. Their weapons seemed to ignore armor entirely. Ships that had survived dozens of battles simply came apart when the human fighters attacked them. But the fighters were not the real threat. Terra 1 itself had begun to do something that made reality scream in protest. Space around the massive ship started to fold and twist. Gravity became a weapon that reached across thousands of kilometers. Ships found themselves pulled toward Terra 1 against the full power of their engines. As they got closer, the gravitational fields became stronger. Hulls that had been designed to withstand the pressure of gas giants crumpled like paper. Admiral Thekaran watched his fleet die around him. All ships, emergency jump. Retreat immediately. Some ships managed to escape into hyperspace. Others were caught in the gravitational web that Terra 1 had created. In 20 minutes, the largest fleet in galactic history had been reduced to scattered survivors and expanding debris clouds. Terra 1 continued on its course, as if 300 ships had been no more threatening than an asteroid field. On the bridge, Dr. Webb stared at the tactical display in shock. We just destroyed half the galaxy's military. No, Admiral Chen corrected. We destroyed the half that was stupid enough to attack us. The smart ones ran away. Dr. Marcus Webb worked alone in his laboratory deep within Terra 1's hull. Around him, quantum field generators hummed with barely contained power. These machines were the heart of everything humanity had become during their exile. They had learned to harvest energy from the fabric of space itself, but the knowledge had come at a terrible cost. The laboratory door hissed open, and his daughter Lisa entered. She moved with the precise efficiency that had become common among her generation. Every gesture was calculated, every word chosen for maximum effect. "Father, we need to talk," she said, sitting across from his desk. "About what?" "About your doubts. About the way you've been questioning Admiral Chen's decisions." Dr. Webb set down the data pad he had been studying. "Lisa, when I was your age, humans believed in something called mercy. We thought it was possible to be strong without being cruel. And where did that belief get us?" Lisa's voice was calm but hard. "Our ancestors tried mercy. They tried cooperation. The galaxy repaid that kindness by attempting genocide. So we become monsters to prevent it from happening again?" Lisa leaned forward. "We become survivors. There's a difference." Dr. Webb activated a holographic display showing Terra 1's power systems. "Look at this, Lisa. Really look at it. Our quantum harvesting technology requires a specific kind of thinking. Cold calculation. Absolute precision. Any emotional interference disrupts the field equations. Your point? My point is that the technology that saved us is also changing us. Every generation becomes more efficient, more logical, more—" He struggled for the word. "More machine-like." Lisa studied the display without expression. "The technology adapted us for survival. That's what evolution is supposed to do. But at what cost? Look around the ship, Lisa. When was the last time you heard someone laugh? When did you last see children playing instead of training? We're becoming something that isn't human anymore." The conversation was interrupted by an alert from the bridge. Admiral Chen's voice came through the intercom. "All senior staff report. Immediately. We have a situation." They made their way to the bridge where the main display showed something unexpected. Terra 1's long-range sensors had detected another ship approaching from the galactic rim. It was human in design but different from Terra 1. Smaller, more elegant, with curves where Terra 1 had angles. "Who are they?" asked Dr. Webb. "Thibby, New Geneva," Admiral Chen replied. "One of the other exile fleets. They've been traveling a different path through the void." The approaching ship hailed Terra 1 using quantum burst communications. The face that appeared on screen was human, but changed by 3 centuries of adaptation. Captain Elena Vasquez had pale skin and enlarged eyes that had adapted to the darkness between stars. Her crew showed similar modifications. "Admiral Chen," Captain Vasquez said, her voice carrying a slight accent that no longer existed anywhere in the galaxy. "We've been monitoring your campaign. Impressive work." "Thank you. What's your status?" "We're ready to join the final assault on Nexus Prime. Our ship carries specialists in biological warfare and ecosystem manipulation. We can make their worlds uninhabitable within days." Dr. Webb felt a chill. "Biological warfare?" Captain Vasquez smiled, and the expression was predatory. "Dr. Webb, we've had 3 centuries to study how alien biology works. We know how to create plagues that target specific genetic markers. The Vorthans could be extinct within a month if we chose." "That's genocide," Dr. Webb said quietly. "That's justice," Lisa replied before Captain Vasquez could answer. "They tried to wipe us out. Turnabout is fair play." Admiral Chen raised a hand for silence. "Captain Vasquez, how many other ships are in position?" 17 so far, with more arriving daily. The Prometheus brings gravity weapons that can crack moons. The Darwin has perfected genetic weapons that rewrite DNA in real time. The Tesla carries electromagnetic pulse devices that can shut down electronics across entire star systems. The list continued. each ship representing a different human colony that had survived in the void. Each had developed its own specialization, its own way of turning survival into a weapon. Together, they represented the evolution of humanity under the most extreme conditions possible. "Excellent," Admiral Chen said. "Begin Phase 2 of the operation." Dr. Webb watched as more human ships appeared on the sensors. Each one was a masterpiece of desperate engineering. Each crew had adapted to conditions that would have killed their ancestors. They had become something new, something harder, something that could survive anything the universe threw at them. But in becoming strong enough to survive, had they lost what made them worth saving? The question that haunted Dr. Webb became more urgent as he studied the tactical data. Terra 1's quantum field generators were powered by harvesting energy from space itself, but the process required more than just technology. It required a specific mindset, a way of thinking that was precise and emotionless. The crew members who operated the quantum systems had to suppress their emotions completely during field generation. Fear, anger, compassion, love, all of these could disrupt the delicate calculations needed to bend reality. Over time, the suppression had become permanent. Lisa's generation had grown up with this technology. They had learned from childhood to think like machines when necessary. The skills that allowed them to power Terra 1 had also drained away their capacity for human feeling. "Admiral," Dr. Webb said during a private moment, "I've been studying our power systems. I think there might be a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The quantum field generators are changing us on a fundamental level. Each generation becomes more efficient but less human. If this continues, we'll evolve into something that has humanity's knowledge, but none of its compassion." Admiral Chen considered this. "Marcus, compassion is a luxury we couldn't afford in exile. It's a luxury we can't afford now. But what happens after we've won? What happens when we control the galaxy, but we're no longer capable of mercy or love, or simple human kindness? We survive, and we make sure no one ever threatens us again." Dr. Webb realized that Admiral Chen had already been changed by the technology. Her emotions had been gradually suppressed over decades of operating quantum systems. She could still think and plan and even care about humanity's future, but she could no longer feel empathy for individuals. The revelation came when Dr. Webb accessed Terra 1's historical records. The ship's original crew had been different. Early videos showed people who laughed and cried and expressed the full range of human emotions. But as the years passed and the quantum technology became more sophisticated, the crew had gradually become more mechanical in their behavior. It was not intentional. It was simply the price of survival. The technology that had saved them from extinction was slowly erasing their humanity. Dr. Webb brought his concerns to the senior staff meeting, but the response was predictable. Lisa listened to his presentation without expression, then dismissed it as irrelevant. "Father, you're describing adaptation. Species change to survive. That's natural. This isn't natural evolution. This is technology rewriting our brains." "So, what?" Captain Torres interjected. "We're alive, we're strong, we can protect ourselves, isn't that what matters?" "What matters is whether we're still worth protecting," Dr. Webb replied. The meeting ended without resolution, but Dr. Webb continued his research. He studied the quantum field equations, looking for ways to maintain the technology without the psychological side effects. The mathematics were incredibly complex, but he began to see possibilities. Meanwhile, Terra 1 and its growing fleet continued toward Nexus Prime. The galaxy's leaders had tried everything they could think of to stop the human advance. Diplomacy had failed. Military force had been crushed. Economic sanctions were meaningless to people who had survived in the void for 3 centuries. Some species had begun evacuating their core worlds. Others had gone into hiding, hoping the humans would pass them by. A few had sent secret messages offering to surrender unconditionally. But surrender was not what Admiral Chen wanted. She wanted acknowledgement. She wanted the galaxy to admit that humanity's exile had been wrong. She wanted them to beg for the mercy that had been denied to her ancestors. Most of all, she wanted to ensure that no species would ever again dare to threaten humanity's existence. Dr. Webb worked frantically, in his laboratory, trying to find a solution before Terra 1 reached its final destination. He had discovered that the quantum field generators could be modified to work without suppressing human emotions, but the process would take weeks to implement. Time was running out. Soon, Terra 1 and its fleet would arrive at Nexus Prime. When that happened, the galaxy would face a reckoning that would determine the future of every species among the stars. The question was whether anything recognizably human would survive to see that future. Nexus Prime hung in space like a jewel, its surface gleaming with the lights of 1 billion inhabitants. The capital world of galactic civilization had never been threatened in its 1,000-year history. Now, 47 human ships approached, from the void, led by the massive bulk of Terra 1. Council leader Morpheus stood in the great hall where this crisis had begun weeks ago. Around him, the surviving representatives of 43 species argued about surrender terms. Half wanted to fight to the end. The other half wanted to negotiate before the humans arrived. "They've given us 7 days to evacuate," reported Ambassador Zektar. His forearms shook with barely controlled rage. 7 days to abandon the greatest city in galactic history. "Perhaps we should listen," suggested the ethereal ambassador, his mental voice weak with fear. "Our fleets are destroyed. Our colonies are conquered. What choice do we have?" "We have the choice to die with dignity," growled Commander Yix of the Hive Collective. Council leader Morpheus listened to the arguments with growing despair. He was old enough to remember when the galaxy had made its first terrible mistake 3 centuries ago. Now they were about to pay the price for that decision. On Terra 1, Admiral Sarah Chen prepared for the final phase of humanity's return. The ship's bridge hummed with activity as her crew coordinated with the other exile fleets. Each ship represented a different human colony. Each had evolved its own specialization during the long exile. "Status report," Admiral Chen ordered. "All ships in position," reported Commander Lisa Webb. "The Prometheus has gravity weapons targeted at Nexus Prime's orbital platforms. The Darwin is ready to deploy biological agents. The Tesla can shut down all electronics on the planet within minutes." Admiral Chen nodded with satisfaction. Humanity had returned not as refugees seeking mercy, but as conquerors demanding justice. Dr. Marcus Webb approached the Admiral's command chair with urgency. "Sarah, I need to speak with you privately." "Can it wait?" "We're about to make history." "That's exactly why it can't wait." They moved to Admiral Chen's office, where Dr. Webb activated a secure holo display. "I've been studying our quantum field technology. I've found something important." "What?" "A way to modify the generators so they don't suppress human emotions. We can keep our technological advantages without losing our humanity." Admiral Chen studied the technical readouts without expression. "Interesting research, Marcus, but irrelevant." "How is it irrelevant?" "Because our emotions made us weak. They made us trust species that were planning our extinction. They made us believe in cooperation when we should have prepared for war." Dr. Webb stared at her in horror. "Sarah, listen to yourself. You're talking like we're no longer human." "Maybe we're not. Maybe that's what we needed to become." The conversation was interrupted by an alert from the bridge. The galaxy's remaining military forces were making a final desperate attack. 200 ships from a dozen species had gathered around Nexus Prime for one last battle. Admiral Chen and Dr. Webb returned to the bridge, where the tactical display showed the enemy fleet in standard formation. They were brave, Dr. Webb had to admit. Facing impossible odds, they still chose to fight. "All ships commence final assault," Admiral Chen ordered. What followed was not a battle in any traditional sense. The human fleet demonstrated weapons that seemed to violate the laws of physics. Reality itself became a weapon in their hands. The Prometheus used its gravity generators to create artificial black holes that swallowed entire enemy formations. The Darwin released engineered viruses that disabled alien crews without killing them. The Tesla's electromagnetic pulses shut down every electronic system within 1,000 kilometers. Terra 1 itself became the center of a gravitational storm that twisted space into impossible shapes. Enemy ships found themselves pulled into dimensions that human mathematics had learned to access during the long exile. In 30 minutes, the galaxy's last military force was scattered debris floating around Nexus Prime. The human fleet had not lost a single ship. Dr. Webb watched the destruction with growing despair. "This isn't victory, this is slaughter." "This is justice," Lisa replied coldly. Admiral Chen opened a communication channel to Nexus Prime. Her image appeared on every screen in the capital city, her voice reaching every inhabitant of the planet. "People of the galaxy," she began. 3 centuries ago, your leaders declared humanity too dangerous to exist. You hunted us through space. You burned our worlds. You tried to erase us from history." The camera focused on her weathered face, showing eyes that had seen too much and forgiven too little. "But we survived. We adapted. We evolved. And now we have returned to claim what is ours by right." She paused, letting her words sink in across the galaxy. "Nexus Prime is now under human control. The Galactic Council is dissolved. In its place, we establish a new order with humanity as the dominant species." Admiral Chen's terms were simple. Every species would acknowledge human authority. Technology would be shared freely, with humans having veto power over any research that might threaten galactic stability. Most importantly, no species would ever again be permitted to develop weapons capable of threatening human worlds. The response from Nexus Prime was immediate and desperate. Leaders who had ruled for centuries begged for mercy. They offered tribute, territory, even their own lives if humanity would show compassion. Dr. Webb watched the communications with growing horror. "Sarah, they're terrified. They're offering everything they have." "Good. Fear keeps people honest. This isn't the humanity I remember." Admiral Chen turned to face him fully. "The humanity you remember was weak, Marcus. It trusted in the goodness of others. It believed that cooperation was possible between species with different values and different goals." She gestured toward the tactical display showing human ships in orbit around the galaxy's capital. "This humanity learned from experience. We learned that survival requires strength and strength requires the will to use it." Dr. Webb made one final attempt to reach her. "What about mercy? What about compassion? What about the values that made us worth saving in the first place?" "Those values nearly got us extinct," Admiral Chen replied. "We can't afford them anymore." The landing began the next day. Human forces descended to Nexus Prime, not as destroyers but as administrators. They brought advanced technology and efficient organization. They also brought data cores containing 3 centuries of scientific advancement. Admiral Chen addressed the Galactic Council in the same hall where the crisis had begun. But instead of weapons, her troops carried information. Instead of conquest, they offered a choice. "We return your communication networks," she announced, activating devices that restored the quantum entanglement arrays. "We share our technology, freely. We offer you partnership instead of domination." She paused, looking around the room at faces that showed confusion rather than fear. "But understand this. Humanity will never again be vulnerable to the whims of other species. We will take our place in galactic society as equals, not as subjects to be judged by our betters." The terms she offered were surprisingly reasonable. The old council structure would be replaced with a new system where every species had representation, but humanity held permanent veto power over any action that might threaten a species' existence. Technology would be shared freely, but humans would maintain control over the most advanced systems. Most importantly, the galaxy would be restructured around cooperation rather than competition. The old system of species fighting over resources would be replaced with coordinated development that benefited everyone. Dr. Webb listened to the terms with surprise. They were harsh but not genocidal. Humanity was asserting dominance but not slavery. "This isn't what I expected," he admitted to Admiral Chen later. "What did you expect?" "Revenge. Destruction. The complete subjugation of every species that opposed us." Admiral Chen smiled, and for the first time in years, the expression seemed genuinely human. "Marcus, we didn't spend 3 centuries preparing for revenge. We spent 3 centuries preparing for survival. She activated a holo display showing the positions of human ships throughout the galaxy. Every exile fleet developed different specializations. Some focused on weapons, yes, but others developed agricultural technology, medical advances, industrial processes. Dr. Webb studied the display with growing understanding. You're not here to conquer. You're here to build. We're here to ensure that what happened to us never happens to anyone else. The galaxy tried to solve the problem of dangerous species through genocide. We're going to solve it through integration. The implementation of the new galactic order took months, but it proceeded smoothly. Human technology revolutionized agriculture. On dozens of worlds, human medicine cured diseases that had plagued certain species for millennia. Human engineering made faster-than-light travel safer and more efficient. But the greatest change was philosophical. The old system had been based on fear and competition. Each species had worried about being conquered or enslaved by their neighbors. The new system was based on mutual dependence. Every species contributed their specializations to the common good. Dr. Webb worked with teams from every major species to modify the quantum field generators. His breakthrough allowed human technology to function without suppressing emotions, and the effect on the galaxy burned until a human dreadnought cast its shadow across the stars. Part 1. The alarm blared through the underground base as Admiral William Carter ran his hand through his gray hair. 20 years of war had aged him well beyond his 55 years. He looked at the holographic display showing the latest Viraki attack on the Mars colony. Another human settlement gone. Another 1,000,000 lives lost in a flash of alien weapons fire. Turn it off, he ordered, and the room fell silent. The dozen officers around the war table stood still, waiting. They were the last high command of what remained of Earth's forces. Outside this bunker, 3 miles beneath the Pacific Ocean, the surface world lay in ruins. "The Leviathan is ready, sir," said Commander Susan Hill. Her voice was steady, despite the dark circles under her eyes. She hadn't slept in 3 days, not since the aliens had found and destroyed their last above-ground military base in Australia. Carter nodded and walked to the far wall where a separate hologram showed their last hope. The HSS Leviathan looked nothing like the warships humans had built before the Viraki came. It stretched over 3 kilometers long, its black hull absorbing rather than reflecting light. Unlike the smooth designs of previous ships, the Leviathan bristled with weapons and sensor arrays, giving it a predatory appearance. "Is the crew ready?" Carter asked. 973 personnel aboard, Susan replied. "Captain George Rivera reports all systems operational." "And the weapon?" Susan hesitated before answering. "The singularity cannon is installed. Dr. Frank Morris says it works in simulations, but he can't promise what will happen in real combat." Carter smiled without humor. "If it fails, we'll all be dead anyway." The Admiral turned to face the group. Each officer wore the same tired expression, the look of people who had watched their world burn for 2 decades. The Viraki Dominion, a coalition of 7 alien species united by their belief that humans were an evolutionary mistake, had appeared without warning. They didn't want Earth's resources or territory. They simply wanted humans gone from the galaxy. "The civilian evacuation ships?" Carter asked. Lieutenant Peter Walsh checked his tablet. "The last transports left Earth's orbit an hour ago. They're heading for the sanctuary worlds in the Tau Ceti system. Those ships carry 2 million people," Carter said quietly. 2 million out of the 9 billion we had before the war began. That's all that's left of free humanity." No one spoke. They all knew the numbers. Billions dead. Hundreds of colonies reduced to radioactive dust. The few million survivors were either on those ships or hiding in the ruins of once great cities, hoping the aliens wouldn't find them. "It's time we showed the Dominion that humans don't die quietly," Carter said. He touched the control panel and a new image appeared, a massive shipyard orbiting a blue star. "This is Helios Secundus. Once it was our largest colony in the Orion arm. Now it's where the Viraki build the ships they use to hunt us. There are at least 300 warships there," said Officer Allenday, studying the image. And over 20,000 Varaki workers. Yes, Carter agreed. A significant portion of their military production. The Leviathan will strike there first. Sir, Susan said carefully, are we planning to warn the workers? Give them a chance? To surrender or evacuate? Carter's expression hardened. Did they warn the children on New Eden? Or the hospital ships at Proxima? No, Commander. This is no longer a war we can fight with rules. It's a war for survival. He walked around the table, looking each officer in the eye. For 20 years we tried to communicate. We tried to understand why they hate us. We offered peace 7 times. Their only answer has been plasma fire and death. Now we'll speak to them in the only language they respect. Power. Carter brought up a new display showing a complex series of symbols, the key to a hidden communication network developed by human resistance cells throughout Varaki-controlled space. After the Leviathan strikes, it will broadcast this signal. Our people behind enemy lines will rise up. Sabotage teams will hit military targets across 50 systems, and the Ashari diplomats will receive our message. The Ashari? Alan asked. They've stayed neutral this entire war. Because they believe we're doomed, Carter said. The Leviathan will show them, and every other watching species, that humans are not finished yet. He closed the displays with a gesture. The ship launches in 6 hours. Commander Hill, you'll join Captain Rivera as my direct representative. Yes, sir, Susan said, straightening her uniform. Carter dismissed the group, but asked Susan to stay behind. When they were alone, he walked to a small safe embedded in the wall. He pressed his hand against it and the door slid open. From inside, he removed a small black box. If the mission fails, he said, handing it to Susan. If the Leviathan is captured, you must activate this. She took the box carefully. What is it? Insurance, Carter said grimly. The Leviathan contains technology we reverse-engineered from crashed Varaki ships, but also innovations they've never seen before. If they capture the ship intact, they'll adapt and become even stronger. This will prevent that. Susan understood. A self-destruct system. I hope we won't need it. So do I, Carter said. But hope hasn't kept humanity alive these past 20 years. Planning for the worst has. 6 hours later, Susan stood beside Captain Rivera on the bridge of the HSS Leviathan as the massive ship rose from its underwater dock. Through the view screens, she watched the ocean part above them, revealing a night sky filled with stars. Course laid in for Helios Secundus, reported navigator Ben Lewis. Stealth systems active. Rivera glanced at Susan, then gave the order. Take us out, Mr. Lewis. Time to show the galaxy what happens when you corner humanity. The Leviathan lifted silently into the sky, its revolutionary engines leaving no heat signature or radiation trail. By the time it reached orbit, not even Earth's remaining sensors could detect it. The ship that would change the course of the war slipped into faster-than-light travel, vanishing from known space. Behind it, Earth waited in darkness, its cities in ruins but its spirit unbroken. The galaxy had burned humanity for 20 years. Now, humanity would burn back. The galaxy burned, until a human dreadnought cast its shadow across the stars. Part 2, the HSS. Leviathan moved through the darkness of space like a ghost. No radar could detect it. No sensor could find its heat signature. The massive human warship approached Helios Secundus after 3 days of faster-than-light travel. On the bridge, Captain George Rivera watched the main screen as the blue star came into view. Around it floated the largest shipyard the Varaki Dominion had built. Hundreds of alien warships in various stages of construction hung in space. Thousands of worker vessels moved between them like busy insects. All stations report, Rivera ordered. Engineering ready, said Chief Engineer Diane Powell. Stealth systems working perfectly. Weapons ready, reported Lieutenant Laura Wilson. Singularity cannon charged to 80% and rising. Life support and medical standing by, added Dr. Julie Rogers. Commander Susan Hill stood beside Rivera, watching the activity in the enemy shipyard. Not one of the alien vessels showed any sign that they detected the human dreadnought approaching. Them? They have no idea we're here, she said quietly. Rivera nodded. That's about to change. He pressed the comm button on his chair. All hands, this is the captain. We are about to engage the enemy. For 20 years they've hunted us across the stars. Today we start hunting back. Throughout the massive ship, nearly 1,000 crew members listened. Most had lost their homes to Viraki attacks. All had lost family. Now they prepared to strike the first real blow in humanity's fight for survival. Take us in closer, Rivera ordered. I want to be right in the middle of their shipyard when we reveal ourselves. Navigator Ben Lewis guided the enormous vessel, with careful precision. Despite its size, the Leviathan moved silently between half-built Viraki cruisers. They passed so close to one alien ship that Susan could see individual Viraki workers through the viewports. The aliens were tall, with gray skin and 4 arms. Their faces had 3 eyes arranged in a triangle pattern. Susan had never seen one alive before, only in intelligence reports. These were the beings who had declared humanity an abomination and set out to exterminate every human in the galaxy. We're in position, Ben announced, at the center of the shipyard. Rivera turned to Susan. Commander Hill, as Admiral Carter's representative, would you like to give the order? Susan hadn't expected this. She looked around the bridge at the faces watching her. Each person there represented what remained of humanity, determined, resourceful, and ready to fight back after years of running. Deactivate stealth systems, she ordered. Let them see us. Lieutenant Alan Day pressed several buttons on his console. Stealth systems offline. For the first time since entering the system, the HSS Leviathan became visible to Viraki sensors. Alarms immediately sounded throughout the alien shipyard. The worker vessels scattered in panic as the massive human warship suddenly appeared in their midst. They're sending messages to their defense fleet, reported Communications Officer Jane Brooks. They're calling for help. Too late, Rivera said. Target the primary construction platforms. Prepare the singularity cannon. On the tactical display, Susan watched as 20 Viraki defense ships turned toward them. The aliens were fast, but they were also confused by the sudden appearance of a human vessel larger than any they had encountered before. Enemy ships are charging weapons, Allen reported. Let them fire first, Rivera said calmly. I want them to understand how useless their weapons are against us. The first Viraki shots hit the Leviathan's shields. Blue energy flashed around, the hull absorbing the alien weapons fire completely. Shields holding at 98%, Allen reported. Rivera smiled. Now, Ms. Wilson, show them what a human dreadnought can do. Laura's fingers danced across her weapons console. The Leviathan's conventional weapons came to life, firing precise shots that cut through 3 Viraki defense ships like they were made of paper. Singularity cannon at full charge, Laura announced. Target the main shipyard hub, Rivera ordered. Fire when ready. Susan held her breath. The singularity cannon had never been used in actual combat. Dr. Frank Morris had warned them that the weapon created a temporary black hole, a dangerous thing even under controlled conditions. The front of the Leviathan opened like a flower, revealing a massive cannon barrel. Energy swirled at its tip, bending light around it. The stars behind it seemed to warp and stretch. Firing, Laura said. A silent pulse left the ship. Where it traveled, space itself twisted. The pulse hit the center of the Viraki shipyard, a massive station where thousands of workers coordinated construction. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly at first, the station began to collapse inward. Metal twisted and broke. The surrounding ships were pulled toward the center point. A small black sphere had appeared where the pulse hit, and it was growing. Gravitational distortion increasing, Allen reported, his voice tense. Just as predicted. Susan watched in awe as the artificial black hole consumed the center of the alien shipyard. Dozens of ships and thousands of workers vanished into its hungry maw. The defense vessels that had been firing on them were caught in the gravitational pull, unable to escape. Collapse sequence in 3, 2, 1. Laura counted down. The black hole suddenly compressed to a pinpoint of light, then exploded outward in a flash of energy. Where the center of the Varaki shipyard had been, there was now only debris floating in space. Silence fell over the Leviathan's bridge. No one had ever seen destruction on this scale before. "Get us out of here," Rivera finally ordered, "before their main fleet arrives." As the Leviathan turned away from the devastation it had caused, Susan watched the few remaining Varaki ships flee in the opposite direction. For the first time in 20 years, it was the aliens who were running from humans. "Send the coded signal to our resistance cells," she told Jane. "Let them know the first strike was successful." Jane nodded and began transmitting the message that would trigger attacks across Varaki space. Meanwhile, Ben calculated the jump to their next target. "Captain," Susan said quietly, "what we just did, we killed thousands of them." Rivera turned to her, his face grim. "Yes, just like they've been killing millions of us for 20 years. This is the language they chose when they started this war." Susan nodded, but something troubled her. "Will we be any better than them when this is over?" Rivera looked at the stars on the view screen as the Leviathan prepared to jump to faster than light speed. "That's why we're fighting, Commander. Not just to survive, but to make sure we remain human even after all they've done to us." The Leviathan vanished into the darkness between stars, leaving behind destruction and a message that would soon spread across the galaxy. Humanity was fighting back. The galaxy burned until a human dreadnought cast its shadow across the stars. Part 3 news of the Helios Secundus destruction spread like wildfire across the Varaki Dominion. For the first time in 20 years, the aliens felt fear. Their leaders had told them humans were weak, that the war was nearly won. Now those same leaders struggled to explain how their largest shipyard had vanished. On the colony world of New Terra, once a human settlement, but now a Varaki mining operation, John Miller worked in the deep tunnels. Like the few thousand other human slaves, he wore a shock collar that kept him obedient. 6 years in captivity had left him thin and scarred, but his eyes still held defiance. "Something's happened," whispered Mary Evans, another slave working beside him. "The guards are nervous. They keep checking their communicators." John nodded slightly. He had noticed it too. The usual cruel confidence of their captors had been replaced by agitation. During the morning lineup, 3 Varaki overseers had been missing. "Maybe the resistance hit another target," he whispered back. The human resistance had been growing, stronger in recent months. Small acts of sabotage, stolen supplies, even a few guard killings. Nothing that truly threatened Varaki control, but enough to give the captive humans a flicker of hope. By midday, the change was impossible to ignore. Half the guards had been called away. The work quotas, usually strictly enforced, went unchecked. By evening, wild rumors spread through the slave barracks. An older man named Daniel Scott, who worked as a cleaner in the Varaki Command Center, brought the most incredible news. "They're saying a human warship destroyed the Helios shipyard," he told the gathered slaves in hushed tones. "Not just damaged it, completely destroyed it, thousands of Varaki dead." "That's impossible," said Mary. "They destroyed all our big ships years ago." "Not this one," Daniel insisted. "They're calling it a Dreadnought. The reports say it appeared out of nowhere, right in the middle of their shipyard. No sensors detected it until it was too late." John felt something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. "What else do they say about this ship?" "That it disappeared after the attack. They sent 50 warships to hunt it, but it vanished." The slaves talked late into the night. For the first time, they allowed themselves to imagine a future where humans fought back, where the endless Varaki victories finally stopped. 3 days later, John was working in the eastern tunnels when all the lights suddenly went out. The emergency systems should have activated immediately, but they didn't. In the darkness, he heard the sound of his shock collar unlocking and falling to the ground. "What's happening?" Mary's voice came from nearby. Before John could answer, a new voice spoke from the darkness. "Resistance Team Echo, we're here to free you all." Light returned in the form of handheld beams carried by figures in mismatched armor. They moved efficiently, unlocking more collars and handing out weapons to the former slaves. How did you disable the security? John asked, accepting a plasma pistol from one of the rescuers. We didn't, the resistance fighter replied. Something knocked out all Viraki systems planet-wide about an hour ago. We've been waiting for a chance like this. As they emerged from the tunnels, John saw the night sky above New Terra filled with unusual light. The Viraki security ships that normally patrolled the atmosphere were falling, their engines dead. On the horizon, the main alien command center burned. Look, Mary pointed upward. Against the stars, a massive shadow moved. Even from the ground, they could see it was enormous, far larger than any human ship John had ever seen before the war. Its dark hull absorbed the light from New Terra's 3 moons, making it look like a piece of the night had come alive. The Dreadnought, John whispered. It's real. As they watched, the massive ship transmitted a message to every working receiver on the planet. The voice was calm, confident, something John hadn't heard from a human military commander in decades. This is Captain George Rivera of the HSS Leviathan to all human survivors on New Terra. The Viraki defenses have been neutralized. Evacuation. Ships are inbound to your location. The resistance will guide you to extraction points. Today you go home. Tears filled Mary's eyes. Home, she repeated. I never thought I'd hear that word again. Across the planet, similar scenes played out as 20,000 enslaved humans were freed. The Viraki guards, cut off from their command structure and faced with armed former slaves, either surrendered or fled. On the bridge of the Leviathan, Commander Susan Hill watched the operation unfold on the main screen. Smaller human ships hidden for years by the resistance landed at designated points to collect the freed prisoners. Second liberation operation successful, she reported to Captain Rivera. Resistance teams report 97% survival rate among the captives. Rivera nodded with satisfaction. And the Viraki response? Still in chaos, replied Lieutenant Alan Day from the tactical station. Their nearest battle group is 9 hours away, and they're moving cautiously. They're afraid this is a trap. Good, Rivera said. Fear is a new experience for them. They should get used to it. Susan studied the captain's face. In the 2 weeks since they had left Earth, the Leviathan had struck 5 major Viraki targets. Each attack followed the same pattern: appear without warning, demonstrate overwhelming force, then vanish before the main Dominion fleet could respond. The Ashari delegation has responded to our message, announced Communications Officer Jane Brooks. They're willing to meet. This was what they had been waiting for. The Ashari were a powerful, technologically advanced species that had remained neutral during the human-Viraki war. If they could be persuaded to ally with humanity, or even just to stop their tacit support of the Dominion, it would change the balance of power. Set course for the meeting coordinates, Rivera ordered, and prepare the data package showing our recent operations. As the Leviathan prepared to jump to faster than light, Susan received a private message from Admiral Carter back on Earth. She excused herself to read it in her quarters. The message was brief. Phase 1 complete. The Dominion is in disarray. Their religious leaders are calling our ship the Shadow of Death. Resistance cells report increased recruitment and morale. The Ashari meeting is crucial. Convince them we can win this war. Carter out. Susan stared at the message for a long time. The plan was working even better than they had hoped. For 20 years, the Viraki had hunted humans across the stars. Now, for the first time, they were the ones being hunted. She thought of the freed slaves on New Terra, seeing the sky again after years in the mines. She thought of the billions already lost to Viraki aggression, and she thought of what awaited them if they failed. The Leviathan jumped into faster than light, vanishing from normal space as it had done so many times before. But this time, it left something new behind. The beginning of a legend that would spread throughout the galaxy. The humans had returned, and they cast a shadow that made even their enemies tremble. The galaxy burned, until a human dreadnought cast its shadow across the stars. Part 4. The meeting place was a desolate moon orbiting a gas giant. Its surface was barren and airless, with no resources worth fighting over. The perfect neutral ground, the HSS Leviathan remained in orbit, its massive form casting a shadow on the moon below. From its shuttle bay, a small diplomatic vessel departed carrying Commander Susan Hill, Communications Officer Jane Brooks, and First Emissary Ryan Adams. Remember, Adams told the others as their shuttle descended, the Ishari value directness, but also respect. They respond to strength, not threats. Susan nodded. Adams had been one of Earth's top diplomats before the war. When the evacuation began, Admiral Carter had specifically requested he join the Leviathan's crew for this mission. Do you think they'll help us? Jane asked. Adams adjusted his formal uniform. They've stayed neutral for 20 years while the Viraki slaughtered billions of humans. I don't think appealing to their conscience will work. Then what will? Susan pressed. Self-interest, Adams replied simply. We need to convince them the Dominion is losing and that helping us is their best option. Their shuttle landed on a flat plain beside a strange domed structure. It hadn't been there a day earlier. The Ishari had built it specifically for this meeting. The three humans donned lightweight spacesuits and exited their craft. The low gravity made walking awkward, but they had trained for this. They approached the dome's airlock and waited. The inner door opened, revealing the Ishari delegation. Susan had seen images of the aliens before, but never in person. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, with slender bodies and 4 long arms. Their skin had an iridescent quality, shifting between blue and green in the light. Their faces featured 2 large golden eyes and a small mouth. 3 Ishari representatives stood in the center of the dome. Behind them, 6 guards watched the humans with visible suspicion. I am Turak Val, the central figure said in perfect English. High Elder of the Ishari Concordat. We have observed your vessel's capabilities with interest. Adams stepped forward and bowed slightly. I am Ryan Adams, First Emissary of Earth. We appreciate your willingness to meet with us. The formalities continued for several minutes, following protocols that Adams had memorized. Susan noted how the Ishari watched them, not with the hatred the Viraki showed, but with cautious curiosity. Finally, they moved to a round table in the center of the dome. The artificial gravity inside made movement easier. For 20 years, we have watched your conflict with the Dominion, Turak Val said. We chose non-interference. While billions of humans died, Susan couldn't help adding. The Elder's golden eyes shifted to her. Yes. The Viraki belief that your species represents an evolutionary mistake is not one we share, but their military power made opposition unwise. That power balance has changed, Adams said smoothly. As you've seen. He activated a small projector on the table. It displayed images of the Leviathan's recent attacks, the destroyed shipyard, liberated colonies, disabled Viraki fleets. Impressive, the second Ishari admitted, but temporary. The Dominion controls thousands of worlds. Your ship, while powerful, is just one vessel. We're not asking you to join our war, Adams clarified, though we would welcome such help. What we request is more specific. Susan placed a data crystal on the table. Access to your communication network. The Ishari leaders looked at each other, their skin colors shifting slightly in what Susan guessed was their version of surprise. That would be seen as direct support of humans, Turak Val said. The Dominion would consider it an act of war. The Dominion is already losing, Adams replied calmly. They simply don't know it yet. He stood and walked around the table, his manner confident but not aggressive. For thousands of years, your people have built and maintained the most extensive communication network in this galactic arm. It connects hundreds of species across thousands of light years. This is known, the third Ishari said impatiently. What may not be known, Adams continued, is that human resistance cells have infiltrated every major Viraki world. They await only a signal, one that your network could deliver simultaneously. The Ishari leaders conferred quietly in their own language. Susan watched them carefully. She had spent the journey studying their body language. Their changing skin colors suggested intense debate. The Viraki doctrine of racial purity has made many enemies, Adams reminded them. How many other species have they declared evolutionary mistakes in their history? How many more will they target once humans are gone? Turak Val's skin shifted to a deep blue. You speak of the Nexari extinction. That was 3 centuries ago. And yet you remember it, Adams noted. Just as you remember how the Dominion annexed the outer Asheri colonies 50 years ago, claiming territorial necessity. This clearly struck a nerve. The guards behind the leaders shifted their stance. You are well informed, Turak Val admitted. But our neutrality has protected our core worlds. For how long? Susan asked. The Viraki see any advanced species as potential competition. Today it's humans. Tomorrow it could be the Ashari. Hours passed in careful negotiation. The Ashari requested breaks to consult with their government. Adams presented evidence of growing resistance to Viraki rule throughout the sector. Susan shared details of the Leviathan's capabilities that impressed even the technologically advanced Ashari. Finally, as the artificial day cycle in the dome began to dim, Turak Val made his decision. We will grant limited access to our communication network, he said, for 1 standard day only. What you do with that access is your concern. Afterward, we will claim our systems were temporarily compromised. That is acceptable, Adams said, hiding his relief. However, the elder continued, should your plan fail and the Dominion maintain power, the Ashari Concordat will deny any knowledge of this agreement. Of course, Adams nodded. And should our plan succeed, the new human government will remember who helped when it mattered most. They finalized the details quickly. The Ashari would provide access codes to their network relay stations. For 24 hours, human resistance cells across Viraki space would be able to coordinate as never before. As they prepared to leave, Turak Val approached Susan privately. Commander, he said quietly, I have studied your species. Humans have remarkable adaptability. We've needed it to survive, she replied. Indeed, but tell me, if you do defeat the Dominion, what then? Will humans become the new oppressors? Susan thought of the billions of dead, the ruined Earth, the refugees. She thought of Captain Rivera's words about remaining human despite everything. We want justice, she said finally. Not vengeance. There's a difference. The elder's skin shifted to a color she hadn't seen before, a soft violet. I hope you remember that distinction when the time comes. Back on the Leviathan, Captain Rivera received their report with satisfaction. One day will be enough, he said. How soon? Can we access their network? The codes will be transmitted in 6 hours, Adams replied. Then we'll have 24 hours to send our message to every resistance cell. Rivera nodded. Good work. Set course for the Viraki home system. It's time for Phase 3. As the massive ship prepared to jump to faster than light, Susan went to the observation deck. She stared at the distant stars, thinking about Turak Val's question. When this was over, if they won, what kind of power would humans wield? Would they remember mercy after so much suffering? She didn't have an answer. But as the stars blurred around them, she made a silent promise to never forget what they were fighting for. Not just survival, but the right to remain human in a galaxy that had tried to burn them away. The galaxy burned, until a human dreadnought cast its shadow across the stars. Part 5, the HSS Leviathan appeared in the heart of the Viraki home system without warning. For the first time, there was no attempt at stealth. The massive human dreadnought hung in space like a dark promise directly above Varric Prime, the sacred homeworld of the Dominion. All Viraki defense systems have detected us, reported Lieutenant Alan Day from the tactical station. They're scrambling everything they have. Captain George Rivera nodded calmly. Let them come. Are we broadcasting on all frequencies? Yes, sir, Jane Brooks confirmed. Every communication device in this system is receiving our signal. Commander Susan Hill stood beside the captain, watching the main view screen. Varric Prime filled the display, a beautiful blue-green world, untouched by the war that had devastated human colonies for 20 years. Its orbital defense platforms were already turning their weapons toward the Leviathan. First wave of defensive ships approaching, Alan warned. 50 vessels, heavy cruiser class. Hold position, Rivera ordered. Shields at maximum. Do not return fire unless I give the command. The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances, but no one questioned the order. They had come too far to doubt their captain now. The first Varaki shot struck the Leviathan's shields, creating ripples of blue energy around the massive ship. More followed as additional defense platforms joined the attack. Shields holding at 90%. Engineer Diane Powell reported from her station. We can maintain this level of defense for approximately 3 hours. Rivera turned to Susan. Begin the transmission. Susan nodded to Jane, who activated the prepared message. On the main screen, Rivera's face replaced the image of Varric Prime. His message would now be playing on every screen across the Dominion capital and beyond, carried by the Ashari communication network to all corners of Varaki space. I speak for what remains of humanity, Rivera began, his voice steady and clear. For 20 years you have hunted us, burned our worlds, slaughtered our children. You believed us weak. You believed us alone. The tactical display showed more Varaki ships approaching, hundreds now, called from all parts of the system to defend their homeworld. You were wrong, Rivera continued. We are neither weak nor alone. At that precise moment, Susan received the confirmation signal she had been waiting for. Throughout Varaki space, human resistance cells activated simultaneously. On 37 critical Dominion worlds, carefully placed nuclear devices detonated inside military installations. Communication hubs went dark. Power stations failed. Ships in dry dock exploded. It's working, Susan whispered. All resistance cells report successful operations. Rivera nodded slightly before continuing his broadcast. At this moment, your military infrastructure is being systematically destroyed by those you thought you had conquered. Your religious leaders told you humans were an evolutionary mistake. They were wrong. We are your reckoning. On the tactical display, Susan watched as a hidden human fleet emerged from the dark side of one of Varric Prime's moons. These ships were smaller than the Leviathan but numerous, vessels built in secret over years, crewed by survivors who had been preparing for this day. Signal from Admiral Carter, Jane reported. Operation Shadowfall is fully underway. All human ships report ready status. Susan felt a surge of pride. The plan had worked perfectly. The Varaki, so confident in their superiority, had never imagined that humans could coordinate a galaxy-wide counterattack. The shadow we cast is larger than one ship, Rivera told the watching Dominion. We could continue this war. We could burn your worlds as you burned ours. He paused, letting the implied threat hang in the silence. Instead, we offer you what you never offered us, a choice. End this genocide. Recognize human sovereignty. Establish diplomatic relations and reparations for your crimes, or face extinction at the hands of those you failed to exterminate. The Varaki response came swiftly. A transmission from the High Temple of Evolutionary Purity, the religious center that had first declared humanity an abomination. This is High Priest Maxis Krell, began the tall, gray-skinned alien whose image now filled the screen. Your threats are meaningless. Your ship, while powerful, cannot stand against the might of the Dominion. Your resistance cells will be crushed. Your species will be... The transmission cut off abruptly as one of the nuclear devices placed by human infiltrators detonated inside the High Temple itself. Susan watched without emotion as the massive structure collapsed on the planet below. More Varaki ships approaching, Allen reported. Their formation suggests they're preparing to use the Purifier weapon. The Purifier had been used to destroy Earth's moon in the early days of the war, a demonstration of Varaki power that had terrified humanity. Activate the defense grid, Rivera ordered, and prepare the singularity cannon. Susan moved to the weapons station beside Lieutenant Laura Wilson. Target their flagship, but don't fire unless ordered. The massive Varaki fleet surrounded the Leviathan and the smaller human ships, their weapons charged and ready. For a long moment, the entire system seemed frozen in time. The hunters and the hunted, their positions finally reversed. Then, unexpectedly, a new transmission came through. not from a military commander or religious leader, but from the Veraki Civilian Council, a political body that had been largely powerless during the war. "This is Council Leader Sarax Ven," said an elderly Veraki whose skin was paler than others of his kind. "We request a ceasefire to discuss your terms." Rivera looked at Susan, surprise evident in his eyes. She checked the intelligence files quickly. "Sarax Ven leads the moderate faction," she told him quietly. "They've opposed the genocide privately for years but lacked the power to stop it. With the military and religious leadership in chaos, they're seizing their chance," Rivera realized. He considered for a moment, then nodded to Jane. "Accept the transmission." For the next 6 hours, while the fleets maintained their standoff, Rivera and Sarax Ven negotiated. The terms were harsh but fair. Immediate cessation of hostilities against humans, withdrawal from all human colonies, reparations for war crimes, trial of those responsible for the genocide, and recognition of human sovereignty. Finally, as the artificial day cycle on the Leviathan came to an end, Rivera addressed his crew. "The Veraki Civilian Council has accepted our terms," he announced. "The war is over." A stunned silence fell over the bridge, followed by quiet tears and embraces. No one had truly believed they would live to see this day. Susan contacted Admiral Carter on Earth with the news. His response was brief but emotional. "Well done, Commander. Bring our people home." As the Leviathan prepared to return to Earth, Susan stood at the observation deck watching the stars. The galaxy had burned humanity for 20 years, but humans had refused to be consumed. Instead, they had cast their own shadow across the stars, not as conquerors or exterminators, but as survivors who remembered what it meant to be human, even in the darkest times. The war was over. The rebuilding would be long and difficult. But for the first time in 2 decades, humanity could look to the stars without fear.